Afternoon, Rotarians and guests. My name is Peter Davis and it's my privilege to be your MC for today. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Welcome to our hybrid meeting to those online and those in the room. Thanks today will be given by Ross Scholes Robinson, followed by the loyal toast to be presented by President Reg. Please ensure your glass is charged.
Thanks, Peter. Well, Rotarians and guests, the war in Ukraine fills us with a sense of pessimism about the future of not only Ukrainians, but for the whole world. I'm also mindful of when the British came here from 1788 onwards, the Aborigines would have felt exactly the same way as the Ukrainians. Our task as Rotarians is to help others as much as we can, and it's my hope that Aboriginal people are being properly integrated into our society, along with all those from other countries who have immigrated to our green and pleasant land. We'll learn from today's speaker how Aborigines are treated in the AFL. The old biblical injunction to love your neighbour as yourself is still a very good motto for each one of us. Rotary epitomises this with the wonderful programs we have in place to help needy people in our world communities. And of course, we give thanks today for good food and our friendly fellowship together.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ross. Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International. People will hear me talking about curved balls that are dished up. Today's curved ball is that the lift that brings up our audio-visual gear has broken down. So the audio, if anyone has problems with the audio, please make your presence felt so we know to speak up. And for our members visiting from home online, we hope your experience is acceptable in the circumstances. We'll be reconvening at around about 1:10, and because of Brendon Gale's program this afternoon, he has another commitment, we will kick off with his presentation as the first item and return with formal Rotary business later in the meeting. So please be seated, enjoy your meal. I'm absolutely delighted that everyone could be here today, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to our 35th meeting for this Rotary year and our 4,931st club meeting in our 101-year history. Our guest speaker today, I think, is an identity who we know quite a lot about already. That's Brendon Gale, the CEO of the Richmond Football Club. Welcome, Brendon. He'll be speaking on the impact of Indigenous reconciliation in the Richmond Football Club and particularly on the club's performance. It will be further introduced later in the program by Ian Hamm. Also here as guests, we have Edward Tudor, who's the Executive Director of the Melbourne Indigenous Transition School, and the Richmond Clubhouse has a very close association because that school conducts quite a lot of its program there. We have accompanying Ed, his colleagues, Paul Barcham and Johnny Short. Welcome to all of you. Please, everyone, welcome our special guests. I'm also delighted today to say that we have some visiting international Rotarians, and I'll now introduce those, as well as several other guests, if we could hold our applause until I've introduced them all. First, we will have Sudhakar Sundaram from India, Michael Hall, who is hosted by Adrian Nelson as a guest from the UK. Moving on to Australian visiting Rotarians, we've got our Assistant Governor for the Batman cluster, Murray Anderson, joining us today. And as guests of Rotarians, we have Ashley James, who's a guest of Queen Scalzo, and Bede King, who's Rob McGurk's guest, and Steve DeBono, who's the guest of Robert Fisher and is the newly appointed leader at the Morgan Stanley Bank. And so we'll get to know us quite well in many ways. Please make all of our guests welcome. Hosted, and by the way, we have an interested person who's looking at joining our club, being hosted by past President Austin Burley from our membership committee. That's Mike El-Babari, and welcome, Mike, as well. As we approach the Rotary International Convention, sorry, I'm getting on to something that's going to come later now. At this stage, what I'd like to do is to invite Ian Hamm, our conversationalist, who will be talking Brendon through his presentation today. Ian, if you come to the podium, and I'll hand over to you to take the meeting further. Thank you.
Thank you, Reg, and it's great to be here today amongst fellow club members. I must get to do this more often. I have to admit I've been remiss at it. But today you don't want to hear from me. We want to hear from Brendon Gale. So hands up here, who knows Brendon Gale? Yeah. Hands up there, who really loves Brendon Gale over the past 4 years? Yeah. I'll move past that, Brendon, now. So everybody will know Brendon and his background. He was a significant player for the Richmond Football Club, and I remember watching him at the MCG during the 80s and 90s. Richmond weren't going so good, but we had a centre-half forward could hold the ball. That really mattered. But aside from that, he's been CEO of the AFL Players Association and took it up to the AFL a bit, which was not a bad thing to do. And then he became the CEO of Richmond and made the bold statement of, in 10 years, we will have cleared our debt, 100,000 members and won 3 flags. I work in Aboriginal affairs, so I know what ambition is. But even that was big for me, you know, but he did it. So that is a fantastic achievement, which I think we'll be able to do many other great things than that. But one of the things which Richmond has done over Brendon's time is engage deeply with Aboriginal Australians and integrate Richmond and Aboriginal communities together to see where that's taken them. I think there's lessons we can all learn from that. So without further ado, would you welcome Brendon Gale?
Thank you, Ian. Those very kind words. Having good players help.
Having good players helps. Now, Brendon, I'm really interested in, so I've got a few questions, but we're interested in exploring the relationship and the journey of Richmond. So really, I suppose, a very simple question is, why did Richmond decide to build a significant relationship with Aboriginal people? And when did it start and why did you do it?
How's that? You hear that? Is that
Yep. So, Brendon, why did Richmond decide to build a significant relationship with Aboriginal people?
Well, football clubs, I mean, sporting clubs of all persuasions really have always been mindful of their place in the community and always provide incredible benefits, whether it's sport and health and participation, or whether it's and the health dividends associated with that, and the connection of belonging, building stronger communities. Well, there's other benefits as well, and AFL clubs have always done that. Richmond has always been mindful of its origins, which go back to 100 years. Richmond was a working class suburb. The club was always mindful of its community obligations to helping people lift up and improve their lives and create aspiration and ambition. So clubs have always done that. But my predecessor was a guy called Stephen Wright, and we did some things in the Housing Commission towers around Collingwood, Richmond. I guess he wanted to formalise that. And because sometimes you can be a mile wide or an inch deep. And it was at that time, I guess, government, both state and federally, were looking at sporting clubs and looking at AFL clubs to walk shoulder to shoulder with, to shine a light on important policy issues and outcomes for them. And one was helping close the gap, with Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australia around education, health, and I guess building leadership capability and helping Indigenous Australians, particularly young ones, have a role in determining their own futures. So we formalised, I guess, a commitment to sort of Indigenous Australian reconciliation through that process. And what it resulted in was an Indigenous institute, a space within our headquarters at Richmond Football Club, which has really nothing to do with football. It's got nothing to do with players or kicks, marks, handballs. It is about developing the next generation of Indigenous leaders. That is located at Richmond Football Club. It's got bipartisan support by federal government. It's got state government support. And it really started from there. And that was 10 or 11 years ago. And it's been an incredible journey of highs and some challenges as well.
Yeah, which I know with the Institute too, it did something which a lot of AFL clubs haven't done, and that's focused on Victoria. A lot of the AFL activity has been in Northern and West and remote Australia, but Richmond decided to focus on Victoria. What was the idea behind that, and how did you go about it?
Well, so I've just explained the context, and that's pretty much what I walk into as a new CEO. It was at the beginning of 2010. So basically had a new broom, a new administration, a new coach, and a new way of doing things. So the feedback we were getting was that there's been and it's full disclosure, Ian had some involvement in the formative stages in terms of advisory capacity, and we relied heavily on his counsel. But the feedback we were getting was so much focus about Indigenous issues in Australia is about the red dirt, and it's about the red dirt. It's all about Northern Australia, Central Australia, all the pollies, all the federal pollies, wherever they want to go and announce something, go out there, and there's a significant Koori population here that has some of the same challenges in health and education, and in some respects is being left behind and hasn't received the proper focus. That could even be applied to football. Even in football, the development and focus on young Indigenous talent will always seem to be around, Northwest WA, the Tiwis, and so that was. We're a club that's has a national footprint. We are domiciled in Victoria, and our focus should be on Kooris.
That's really important, Brendon, about being active where you live, because too often I think the clubs forget we're from Melbourne, we're Victorian. Let's build on that. Which goes to the Kurungamaji Institute itself, which is the name of the program at Richmond, or the institute there, and the real focus on the Richmond and emerging Aboriginal leaders. My son did that program, and he's not a talented kid in a whole range of things, but he's not deeply disadvantaged. In fact, this program was aimed at the middle. So what do you think were the keys to success to really making this grab with the Aboriginal community in Victoria?
Well, as you're fully aware, Ian, we had a few bumps early doors, because it's probably fair to say, whilst the idea was a sound one and it was conceived and put together very quickly and supported by government very quickly, there probably wasn't a lot of consultation with the local community. And so when we started, there was probably a bit of mistrust. It was like, well, hang on a minute, you've got this federal government money for you white fellas to build a gym for your footy club, which wasn't the case. It's basically, why weren't we consulted? Why weren't we given an opportunity to shape this? So basically, we had to go back and right from scratch and consult with local Indigenous leaders, Koori leaders, to tell government where we're going, how we wanted to sort of orientate the focus. And there's a government requirement that they wanted sort of formal certificate type training. We didn't think that was probably the right outcome. So we emerged on this sort of bespoke approach called our real program, as Ian indicated, the Richmond Emerging Aboriginal Leadership Program. And what that was about going into the communities around Victoria, east and west, and finding young kids who turn up to school and valued education, They weren't knocking out of the park, but they showed potential, and bring them down for a sort of a bespoke experience and helping them recognise, firstly, who they are. So there's a lot about cultural affirmation, and knowing who they are, having that sense of self-awareness and self-worth. And once you've got that, it's adding in some building blocks around leadership and as I said right at the start, giving them the confidence to determine their own futures, or play a role in terms of their own futures. And even the VEC, the Victorian Electoral Commission, has been a really valuable partner, and helping them navigate their way and show them how do you participate in democracy? How do you make a difference? How can you go up and represent your mobs from wherever you're from? So it's been going for, it was our 10th anniversary last year. We had a big celebration organised, but COVID got in the way, as it did with most things. And we've had thousands of kids go through that over the last 10 years. We're really, really proud.
It's a great, excuse me, it's a great program, Brendon, because it's neither focused on the deeply disadvantaged or the overtly talented. It's just the ordinary kids in the middle who quite often get overlooked. Brendon, the next thing Richmond did, and I think it took all of us by surprise, was the Melbourne Indigenous Transitional School, and Edward's with us today, which brings together students from remote and regional communities to prepare them for schooling in Melbourne. A football club and a school are not what kind of naturally jumps to a lot of people's minds about an association. So it's an unusual football club. So why did Richmond say yes to this when the proposal came?
Well, I think the first thing is we had some runs on the board. We consulted, we developed, or so we had established the KGI. We had some, the kids coming through, we're getting some good outcomes. We had some runs on the board, and I guess that approach was filtering through the entire club. So this has got nothing to do with football. I just want to emphasise that. But I guess the environment we're creating and the skills we're putting around it was filtering through the club and helping us deal with our own Indigenous players and create an environment for them. So when a legend in Victorian education called Rick Tudor, and Ed's his son here today was introduced earlier, he was a long-standing principal at Trinity Grammar, and he saw these wonderful Victorian or Melbourne schools offer very generous scholarships to bring young Indigenous boys and girls to school in year 8, relying on their foundations, whether it's Scotch and Stuart Rioli into Scotch and MLC and whatever the case may be. But it's a big jump. It's a really big jump coming off Tiwi to Scotch College. Really, really tough. And so Rick came up with this idea. Well, let's establish a transition experience where we bring these children down who show excellence in terms of turning up to school and valuing education, are sort of supported by their parents who want them to go to Victoria and get a transitional experience where they can get their literacy, numeracy, their education up to a satisfactory level. So when they go to year 8, they can engage and they can build confidence and contribute to get a good experience. So when Rick brought that idea to us, we thought, well, we've got this culturally safe environment. We've got some runs on the board. Let's give it a go. And I think it's 6th year now, Ed, 6th year, and it's got great support. It's got government support as well, and the tutors rely heavily on generous supporters. But there's empirical evidence to show it's working. Turning up, staying in school. I've got a young boy we've had for 3 years who comes to the Kimberley. He's had a tough few years through COVID, but the courage he's shown, it's been incredible. And the growth in him, it's been fantastic, and it's actually made us a better family, to be honest. Yeah. So good. We've got 2 now. So there you go.
It's all right. I've got 2 Aboriginal kids at my house. They're my children. But this is a pretty deep engagement by Richmond Football Club, a significant engagement. But often we think about the AFL and its club and what they do for Aboriginal people and communities. What I'm really interested in, Brendon, is what's Richmond got out of this relationship, because you don't build these partnerships and them not have an impact on you. So how has the presence of Aboriginal people helped shape Richmond over the past 10 years?
Well, the first thing is, Ian, it's another way in which we really powerfully reflect our purpose. At the end of the day, we play football. We try and win as many games as we can but we try and get in grand finals and we try and win premierships. And that's the most important thing we do as a footy club. We can't do anything more important than that. It's a really hard thing to do, but it's not why we exist. It's not why we exist. And we exist for a very deeper and a broader purpose, which I won't go into explaining, but that's what we describe as connecting to thrive and win. And so that has a very strong meaning within our footy club, which everyone knows. And so firstly, it gives us an opportunity to really reflect our purpose. We do that a number of different ways. And our members buy into that purpose because they want their club to stand for, people don't necessarily buy what you do. They buy the underlying reason of why you do things. So our members buy into that, our corporate partners, when you're genuinely a purpose-driven organisation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think what our connection with Indigenous Australia, our commitment to reconciliation, has forced us to really open up our minds and our hearts to learn and to listen, and to understand the true nature of Indigenous history, and how that might impact lives and pathways, and how that's benefited us is, as an elite sporting environment, we are an extremely driven football club. Make no mistake, we want to win, and we want to do everything we can to win. But sometimes just spinning the wheels harder and just going hard, fitter, faster, stronger, competitor, it's sometimes not the solution. And I think what we've learned about Indigenous Australia is, it's the broader forces. It's the connection to family. It's the connection with community. And this is something we've all had rammed on the last couple of years. It's family, the mob, the community. It's connection to country. How country nourishes us. It's connection to the spirituality, whatever form that might take, how that sustains us. Ultimately, they're the things that really matter. And they're the things that increasingly matter in delivering elite sporting performance. So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but anyway, it's whilst this commitment had nothing to do with footy, it still doesn't. It's washed through in how we manage footy and how we deliver elite performance.
And do you think that's had an effect of giving football the perspective it needed? Because you were just saying that often you focus so much on what happens on the ground and needing to win. So I guess I'm interested in, do you still think there's more to be learned, and your reflection on that?
Oh, there's always more to learn. One of the great experiences was we had a young boy called Daniel Rioli. Now, Daniel Rioli is a remarkable young man, and he came off the Tiwis. Him and a buddy went for the Tiwis to a scholarship, not at Scotch or MLC. Went to St Pat's, Ballarat. Ballarat's a pretty cold place compared to the Tiwis. His buddy comes down, so he comes down to year 8. His buddy lasts about a month and bails out, which is understandable. A lot of people bail out of Ballarat. I do that. Great place. You know what I'm saying? Daniel stayed the course. Year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, year 12. Was VCal and gets drafted. And he comes in. He spends about 3 months living with Damien Harwick. And it was a time when Damien was probably under pressure as a coach. He's probably emphasising things that probably didn't add a lot of value. He's going through a period of self-discovery himself. And so I think that time with Daniel, he learned, well, it's not all black and white. And it can't all be evaluated and measured. It's got, it's got to be patience and connect and coaching players is about connection, and it's being open with each other and sharing and investing and being authentic. And as a coach, you can't be all commanding and domineering. Sometimes you got to let your guard down as well. So, it's an ongoing. Probably haven't answered your question, but we're always learning.
That I think is really important, that thing of leading from behind or leading other ways. And it's not the old fashioned, coaches just yelling at people. It's now about how do you get the best out of people. And that's certainly from an Aboriginal perspective, that's who we are. How do we get the best out of each other? So Richmond, over the journey, there's been a lot of positives over this journey, the real camps, the mid school, lots of other things, but no relationship comes without its difficulties. No relationship gets through without potholes, at the very least. So what's some of the difficulties Richmond's encountered? And if you were giving advice to other bodies, such as the Rotary Club of Melbourne who want to engage more deeply with Aboriginal people, what's some of the advice that you would give us, Brendon?
Oh, look, I think I've already touched on a couple of aspects. You know, it's you know, footy clubs are they can be very regimented environments where you know coaches and players love certainty, where performance, because of the range of statistics we have these days, can be measured, evaluated, and dissected. But you know, life and managing athletes. And particularly young Indigenous athletes, we have young men and women now, can be very uncertain. And sometimes because our standards are so high, what we expect in terms of performing and training, preparing, you know, we've got this inclination to be non-negotiable but yeah, I think it's you know, life, you know, I think it's about grey. It's about patience. It's about, you know, seeking to really understand the true nature of the people you're dealing with, and put yourself empathy, these sorts of things. Because that regimented approach just won't work. Yeah.
Well, one of the things from within government that was always a valuable lesson is that the Aboriginal community doesn't care about the government's agenda. I guess it's the same with football clubs. I guess it's the same with service clubs like ours. Who we want to work with don't care what we want to do. How do we fit in with where they're going? Brendon, look, the last question I've got, one for me, which is one I think a lot of Richmond people don't want to contemplate, but I'm going to ask it. You know, culture at football clubs and other things is often defined as a winning culture and a culture of success. It's measured by on-field triumphs, as I said before. Under your leadership, Richmond has expanded its conceptual definition of culture to include looking at the world through other people's eyes. In this case, most notably Aboriginal eyes and the eyes of Basher Hooley, the first Muslim player to really succeed in the AFL. This has been a significant achievement by you, Brendon. I'm not just saying that, but it has been a significant achievement. So where does that fit into the legacy of Brendon Gale when you eventually move on from Richmond?
You know, something I don't say, indeed. But the way we're going, that might be sooner rather than later. Oh, look, you know, I guess I find nourishment in purpose. I played football. I worked in commercial law for a few years. It wasn't as fulfilling for me as it might be for others. No knock on the law, but I think you know, I find what I do at the football club, we're not curing cancer, you know, let's be honest, but you know, sport in this country, particularly football, is really, really important in bringing communities together and strengthening communities, in, you know, making people feel as though they belong and get impact. And it comes at a time, I think sport is becoming more than just sport. You know, I think we're you know, sport brings institutional, social, cultural force of power. I mean, there's so many things pulling us apart. There's so many things, and your labels, but I think sport brings you together. So I find that a really privileged place to play in and to lean into. I'm proud of our club for leading into that. It's made us a better club, and it's made us a better football team, and it's ultimately helped us win premierships. I can absolutely draw a correlation behind that. So I mean, yeah, we're not curing cancer, but sport is it means a lot to a lot of different people, and I think there's still a lot of work to do in making sure Australians work together. I truly believe in our future. I think we're a great country. I'm passionate about multiculturalism and diversity. I think it's enabled a diversity of backgrounds and beliefs and which is a source of great unity and strength, rather than division or weakness. And we can never take that for granted. And to me, the reconciliation agenda sits within that. And you know, I'm really proud to be involved in endeavours, whether that's footy club or whatever, that lead into that.
That's great.
There you go.
That's great, Brendon. That's enough questions from me. Should be questions from you guys now, but I'm going to hand over to Stephen Mandy, another great Richmond man, to lead the Q&As from the floor. Stephen.
I think it's members' turn and guests' turn now, maybe to ask Brendon some questions. We haven't got a lot of time. Brendon has to shoot off. Brendan's got to go back to the club. I understand that it's not football related, but something you'll see on the news tonight, I guess.
Well, Stephen, just to elaborate on my point, I've just got a call last night. We've got the Federal Trade Minister, Dan Tehan, and his counterpart, the Indian Trade Minister, who's hosting a delegation of businessmen, Indian business and MCG and Punt Road. So just, I guess it highlights the willingness of government to work with football and delivering out sports diplomacy in this instance.
And they couldn't pick a better club to come to.
No.
So, but from the floor, I might, if I may, just ask one very, very quick question, if I may, Brendon. You're Tasmanian. You played football in Tasmania. It's inevitable we're going to get a team from Tasmania sooner, perhaps rather than later. What are the football club's point of view about having 19 teams in the system and having a bye every other week?
Look, I think we should have a team out of Tasmania, Stephen, because I think it's a just cause and that will never go away. I think their credentials, their claims are compelling, and I won't bore you with all of that. But having said that, full disclosure, I am a former Tasmanian, I'm biased. The clubs won't like it because clubs will always vote in self-interest. And if it means another club has to come in and be supported, and, less money for clubs, that'll be, well, we can't see the bigger picture. But that's why we have an AFL commission. That's why we have an AFL commission charged with making the right calls without vested interest at the right time. So I think a Tasmanian team can be brought in, which contributes. It mightn't be wildly financially accretive, but it'll wash its face. But it'll be wildly socially accretive in terms of how it will contribute to Australia's only indigenous game, a truly national game, and then the code's ability to leverage off that in so many different ways. So a biased answer, but I think a very strong claim. So it's so much the competition.
Thanks, Brendon. If anyone asks a question, could you please stand up and state your name? Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Brendon. Rob worked that's all the work done. Just a question though, how useful do you think your reconciliation action plan has been, and how do you extend also reconciliation message out to all of the members?
Well, it's just, we have a wrap in Elevate status and has been that way since 2015. And so we work really hard to fulfill all the various elements of that. It's an accountability piece. It's a true north, and we don't always get it right. But it's important. And being an Elevate status, it puts us in a community of practice. Well, I think we're the only sporting club in Australia, or the governing body, and there's a number of other corporates. So we can learn and leverage off each other. But I'll give you a little story. No names, no patronage. But we had a Dreamtime game a couple of years ago. It's a big game for those who aren't aware. We play Essendon every year, and it's a game to celebrate reconciliation in Australia. And it's played at the MCG, and there's about 85,000 turn up, and the national TV audience of 1.4, 1.5 million. It's a big event. And so we host it every second year. So, and this year, actually, it's our turn, but it may be election night, unfortunately. This is the way it's looking. But PMs, premiers, captains of industry always turn up, and and we showcase the club and what we're doing. We're very proud to do that. And we always use the pre-game as an opportunity to talk about an issue that might be a bit confronting, but people will raise awareness about some of the issues and understand the true nature of challenges and history. And so this one we talked about Indigenous incarceration, the rates of incarceration, which are extraordinarily bad. Because we had the PM that Turnbull and anyway. So it was a bit edgy. EY had just commissioned a PwC, a big report, and we presented the high level. Now, there's a coterie member of our club who's a very successful businessman and a passionate tiger. And he came up to me before the game, and he had every right to ask me this question. But he said, Brendon, I just want to come to the footy, and I just want to watch the footy, have a couple of beers, and have a day. Why do we have to put up all this Aboriginal bullshit? Excuse the French. And I said, because so-and-so, this is leadership, and it's uncomfortable, but this is where we're going. We need to be better club, better community, better country. We win by 10 goals. It's a great night. He comes up after the game. He grabs him by the shoulder. He said, Gailey, we're not doing enough. What are we doing about incarceration? You know, so my point is, we speak to Middle Australia. And our attraction to be able to, I guess, shift attitudes, to shine a light, to educate is very, very, very powerful. But it comes with great responsibility and obligation. And I think we've probably even got a sense of that the last couple of days. Very long answer, but anyway, hopefully.
Any over Austin.
Thanks, David. Thanks for the delivery there. That's terrific. And you mentioned about our support in general and people brings communities together. It's probably no case except for Richmond playing home. Seriously, you gave great about the transition for these indigenous people it's down here, what's happening in the club. What sort of education is going to be our members of non-indigenous understanding the indigenous?
Well, I just gave you a very simple example, but I mean, most members, you know, we've got 100,000 members, we've probably got, you know, 700,000 supporters around the country. They're digitally enabled. I mean, we can, you know, you've got your world at your fingertips these days. I mean, the consumption of our club through this grows exponentially every year. So we educate. As I said, it's a great responsibility to play in this space. A great privilege, but it comes with responsibility, and to take people on this journey we do and educate. There's some people who don't like what we do. I'll be honest, there's people who don't like the fact we have an Orthodox Muslim playing football. They don't like it. I get that. But I think, and we have people turn up the MCG and say all sorts of awful things, they get thrown out, and that happens. We deal with that. But these are, because of our prominence and platform, these are teachable moments where we can teach our people. So, you know what? We can't do that anymore. You know, we've got to be better than that. To be a footy club, we've all got to be respected. To be a good footy team, we've got to play our role, and we've got to be respected, and we've got to pitch in, and we've got to be the greater the sum of our parts. Same with our country. Everyone has to feel included. Everyone has to be respected, and when they are, they'll impact. And we'll be better together. And so it's just an ongoing discussion. Yeah, we don't always get it right, but we keep striving.
Well, what do we say about that? I mean, that's fantastic, Brendon. I thank you for coming. And I know you've got to leave momentarily, and I think you've enlightened a lot of our members and guests about the Richmond Football Club and beyond football and what else you're happy to do at Richmond. You're a star footballer, and I've got to say you've been a star CEO, and well done to you. And ladies and gentlemen, if you could thank Brendon in the normal manner. Just before you go, Brendon, we've got here a little gift for you. We've got our 100-year edition centenary socks. I hope they're big enough for you. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
My socks are doing the
Yeah. They're manufactured by our past president and fellow member, Philip Endersby, and probably the last clothing manufacturing company in Australia. But they're magnificent socks, and also our centenary coin and our 100 book. So we present that to you, and thanks for coming. At this stage, I'd just like to thank Rotary Ian Hamm for his presentation today. Those questions were simply amazing, Ian. Well done, and thank you. And I'll pass the meeting back to President Rich. Thanks very much, Ian, Stephen, and Brendon. Marvellous presentation, and I think we're all the better for it. Thank you. I'd now like to. I'm going to do. We've got 3 more items on the agenda for today's meeting. The first is to celebrate Ted Garland's anniversary in the club. Ted joined us on this day in 1983. He's been named a Paul Harris Fellow, and he was named in 1998 for his career work in mining, petroleum, exploration and aerospace technology, combined with his outstanding work as a Rotarian in the International Service Committee, both in the club and in the district. His work in particular with homeless youth. He's organising of the Youth Hub for the 1993 convention of Rotary, and his service as a director for the club in the early 90s, and his vice presidency in the mid-90s have all been incredibly impressive contributions. I'm going to publish the rest of the citation that I've started reading in the bulletin this weekend, where everyone can read and absorb it. But I thought the best way to spend limited time that's left for this meeting was to invite Ted to the podium to say a few words. Ted, congratulations on your years of amazing service to this club. There's a lot more to the story than I've had time to tell, but you're a much loved and valued member, and we congratulate you.
Thank you, President Reg. I wasn't expecting this. Excuse me. When I joined this club, there was 200 members, and we regularly used to get 150, 160, 170 to a lunch meeting. Today, unfortunately, it's not quite like that. But if we all come together, and once this COVID thing is properly out of the road, maybe we can grow the club once again. I've had a tremendous time in the club. I've met some amazing people, and it never ceases to amaze me the abilities that my fellow members have got in all sorts of fields. And I'm very grateful for meeting these people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. I'm now going to invite one of the 32 members of this club who was a member in 1993 when the club hosted the last Rotary International Convention. We're just starting to get ready to plan some hosting events, which include a large Monday night function at a venue around Melbourne and individual home hosting for a meal. It's not a residential hosting, it's just for a meal, but it's a great opportunity for fellowship. And I thought nothing better than inviting past President Peter Dakin to the podium just to give us a bit of shared experience from that time. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Reg. And to those of you at home, to show off my Melbourne tie for Stephen Manley today. That was a very interesting presentation from Brendon. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Rotarians and guests, and particularly those online who we can't see with the screen not working today. Well, I've got my sales hat on today regarding the Rotary International Convention that Reg mentioned. We're hosting from the 27th to 31st of May, 2023. Won't take long for that 12 months or so to go by. Now, I'm certainly not a super salesman like last week's Paul Harris Fellow awardee, Alan Trumbull, who used to flog wine to us very successfully. But I'm very keen to get a commitment from many of you and your partners in terms of home hosting opportunities for international and interstate guests on Monday, the 29th of May, 2023. That is a date I hope you will all pencil into your diaries and calendars and try and make an early commitment. It is sensational, with great excitement, that Melbourne will once again host the RA convention, and our club, together with District 9800 clubs and other districts, are engaging volunteers to welcome over 20,000 delegates to our city. This will be the largest conference secured this century for Victoria and take place using superb venues, including Rod Laver Arena and the Melbourne Convention Centre. I have fond memories of the World Convention we hosted in Melbourne from the 21st to 22nd of May, 1993. Some are fading a little bit. And I find it very hard to believe that 30 years have passed since we welcomed 21,658 Rotarians, including 13,193 from 115 overseas countries and 8,465 Australian Rotarians. Over the past 3 decades, we've lost a number of very special Rotarians, who amongst many were instrumental in ensuring the success of the convention, including past presidents and legends John Kendall and David Whitner and John Urbans, amongst many others. The House of Friendship, which is traditional at all these conventions, was fantastic, allowing Rotarians from all over the world to mix and make new acquaintances. The city of Melbourne was certainly brought to life with thousands of Rotarians wearing their lanyards. It was a great opportunity to promote Rotary, which is something I don't think we necessarily do that well. But everywhere you moved around the city into the G, there were Rotarians with lanyards. Now to my sales pitch, and I'd ask, well, Jo unfortunately can't show us on the screen, but she can to those who are the hybrid meeting today. But this flyer here will be going out to all of you, and with links in the bulletin to be able to register. If I just might refer to this flyer. Melbourne Convention hosts Hospitality Night. Monday, the 29th of May, 2023, is the Melbourne Convention hosts Hospitality Night, an RI convention tradition where local Rotarians and clubs provide delegates with a memorable evening of hospitality, local culture, and international fellowship. We're now seeking expressions of interest from individual Rotarians and clubs to participate in either home hosting or club hosting events. This is a great opportunity to induct delegates into the culture and marvels of our wonderful city. And hopefully our city, this will be a great opportunity to really showcase again. Now, home hosting opportunities. Rotarians who are registered for the convention and live within an approximate 15k radius of the CBD can apply to host between 4 and 8 international and interstate guests in their home for dinner. Priority for hosting will be given to registered convention attendees, but non-attendee Rotarians are also welcome to apply. As a home host, you'll be responsible for arranging transport for your guests to and from your home. You may want to consider involving others in your club or immediate family to assist in the process. It is acceptable to have guests return to their hotels by taxi or Uber after tasting some of our lovely Victorian wines. Hosts will receive $55 per guest from the registration fee for this event to help offset the cost of the dinner and transport. And as I said, there'll be the opportunity to register online for that. Then the club hosting opportunities. This ever popular convention event fills quickly, and we expect that Melbourne won't be any different. Clubs or a group of clubs are invited to design their own event and dinner, which can be at the same venue or 2 different venues. To minimise travel times, venues should be within 20k of the CBD. Guests are picked up by a bus from the hotel, and once on board, an announcement about their destination will be provided as a surprise. Clubs will need to host guests in multiple of 50, 1 bus load, and have at least 5 to 10 hosting Rotarians and partners for each group of 50. Now, this will be on the same night. So President Reg will be contacting group captains shortly to encourage our members to make these hosting activities a great group fellowship night and opportunity, and to meet and warmly greet visiting Rotarians. I would like to acknowledge the early RI convention planning work that was undertaken by Hugh Bucknell, Kevin Sheehan and others, and for all of us to support past President Mary Barry, who's here today in her capacity as chair of the host organising committee. It's a huge task, but I do remember just how wonderful it was all those years ago, and you'll gain great benefits out of that, Mary. So this is a great opportunity to once again proudly showcase Melbourne and the Rotary movement. Please seriously consider being part of what will be a really memorable event in our club's history. Hopefully for the next presentation, I might be able to have some sort of home hosting hat or something. I reckon David Jones, you had one of those all those years ago. It might be in your cupboard up top. It is in the cupboard, okay. All right, thanks for listening, and give it serious consideration. Back to you, Reg.
Thanks very much, Peter. Now, finally, I wanted to draw your attention to a new volunteering opportunity. Mark Lace is going to come to the podium now to give us just a little explanation of what it's all about. Over the last 35 years, international education has become one of Australia's most significant export industries. Many have held long-standing concerns, however, about the quality of the lived experience of students. And of course, then came the pandemic and enrolments plummeted. They're starting to build up, and the objective of this initiative is to help really pay some attention to the quality of experience that international students have when they're here. So they make friends, they build linkages to the community. So without stealing any more of Mark's thunder, I'm going to call on her to give you a bit of a pitch on this great initiative.
We can do a dual pitch. I think today has all been about, can you hear me? Wrong microphone, sorry. We've just heard from Brendon about the importance of relationship. We've talked about international, we've talked about making connections. The Victorian government has put some real money and energy, I'm not speaking for the government, in bringing back international students. And we know that one of the critical issues with international students is giving them connection on arrival, so they don't just live with other international students, but they can actually engage with Melbourne and all the good things that we have about Melbourne. So there's an initiative that was piloted pre-COVID or in the early days and has come up again, which is, can Victorian Rotary, particularly our district, find 35 mentors for 13 weeks, that's once a month or once a week, starting on Zoom and hopefully meeting the person, for a short burst of mentoring and supporting young, over 18, undergraduate, postgraduate and TAFE students. So 13 weeks starting at the end of April, hopefully. Interestingly, this pilot is looking for 35 mentors from our club and other district clubs, and 15 mentors from Vancouver with 15 mentees. Why Vancouver? Because Canada never stopped taking international students, and the Rotary clubs there develop strong mentoring. Deakin University are going to evaluate this pilot and see what we can learn from Canada, what they can learn from us, and what we've learned, with an intention to roll it out in a wider realm. So in the next bulletin, without Sue Smith putting in, there will be a detailed leaflet explaining the program. There will be a link to how to register, which is with the District Vocational Chair, Warwick Cavell, and that email will be in the bulletin. And if you want more information, there will also be a link to what's recently been established, which is a Rotary mental hub for our district, and which we're involved in spirit and seeing how it will develop. And we're hoping that there will be other mentoring opportunities that arise, because mentoring is a great way of us giving back and of also attracting others to Rotary Melbourne. So that's all I need to say. Thank you.
While Mark's here, I've got a bad reputation as a raffle drawer, as many of you will know. I'm going to ask Mark to draw the raffle. Thanks very much, Mark. The ticket is a valid ticket. It's a red C01. Thank you, Sue. And Jim Barry, I think, is the... Okay, it's now time to draw the meeting to a close, and I'd simply like to remind everyone that next week we've got quite an interesting, our first resumed face-to-face evening meeting, which will be at 6 o'clock at the Lyceum Club next Wednesday evening, the 13th of April. And the featured guest speaker is quite a character. His name is Sandy Hook. He's got a big story to tell of life's lived experiences in a range of domains. Please be there if you can. So I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us today. It's been great to have you here. I think this has been quite an informative event, and I'm really delighted that we're able to get to Ian and Brendon on the platform. It took us a bit of effort, as people will know, but Brendon delivered and Ian led a great conversation. Thank you, Ian. I'd also like to thank Stephen Mandy for handling the slightly diminished question time. And of course, the lunch reception team and setup team really took a curveball this afternoon in setting up this interim technology. And thank you everyone for your contribution there. Anyone who's got a few spare minutes afterwards who'd like to hang around and help in the unpacking or take down of the setup, we'd really appreciate assistance. So please now join me, stand for the national anthem. Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Thank you, everyone.